Charlene Elizabeth Caroline Downs was born on March 25, 1989, in Coventry, located in the West Midlands of England, to parents Robert Sr., also known as Bob, and Karen Downs. She was the second of four children and had two sisters, Emma and Rebecca, and a brother, Robert Jr. Karen would later describe her daughter as a bubbly, cheeky teenager with an infectious smile who loved animals and music. Charlene also loved fashion and the Irish boy band Westlife. In 1999, when Charlene was 10 years old, the family moved north to Blackpool, a seaside resort town in Lancashire on the northwest coast of England, known for its landmark tower and its famous illuminated promenade. There, Charlene enrolled at St. George's School. By 2002, Charlene had been expelled from St. George's for truancy. After that, she spent much of her time around Blackpool's central promenade in town center. Charlene's friend Martin later described her as really caring until she was 12 or 13, but then said something shifted. He said, "Her eyes changed. It was like she was gone, just trying to make it all go away."
The Blackpool area is home to more than 1,200 registered sex offenders. Child poverty in some wards runs above 50%, and children in the care system are placed there at 3 times the national average. In recent years, Blackpool has had one of the highest numbers of sex crimes reported to the Crown Prosecution Service than any other area in the country. The Downs family had been known to child protection agencies while still living in the West Midlands, a decade before they moved to Blackpool. In early 1989, West Midlands Police and Social Services launched a joint investigation into the family. A convicted sex offender had been making regular visits to the home, taking then 3-year-old Emma for unsupervised rides in his car. This man had been convicted in 1982 for SA and had served 6 years in prison for it. This is in addition to 2 prior prison sentences for also SAing young girls. The family was made fully aware of all of this. Social Services strongly advised Bob to ensure this man had no access to his children. By November of 1989, he was seen drinking at a local pub near the family home. A witness told authorities they had seen him fondling Emma inside the house with both parents present. In 1993, Emma moved in with her grandfather and his second wife. While living there, she told Social Services that before moving in with her grandfather, she had been SA'd by her paternal grandmother and a tenant in the grandmother's home. She also said that her mother Karen and her grandmother had assaulted her on multiple occasions. An investigation was carried out, but no charges were brought against anyone. In 1997, Emma alleged SA by another family friend, but that investigation too failed to produce charges. In 1998, both Charlene and another girl alleged that a man that the Downs family had trusted to take them to school had SA'd them. The man was charged, but the case fell through when the other girl refused to testify. Police report noted that Bob and Karen had some knowledge of the attack, but failed to act on it. Social Services began discussing willful neglect charges and court orders to place the children in state care. Charlene and her 2 sisters were placed with foster families, but these placements did not last, and eventually they all returned home. Shortly afterward, Bob moved the family to Blackpool. When they arrived, the children were added to the local child protection watch list.
Leaked police and social services documents lay out what life inside 109 Buchanan Street looked like during the years that followed. According to those documents, Bob was the center of the household, and his main contribution was the characters he kept bringing in. He associated with men who had serious drinking problems, which fed his own. According to the same documents, approximately 16 men with violent convictions, including SA, were allowed to stay at or visit the Downs family home over a 15-year period. Bob and Karen consistently maintained they were unaware of their acquaintances' criminal histories. The documents also note that Bob appeared to be feared by his own family, who reportedly had to address him as Mr. Downs.
Between January and March of 2000, Social Services records show that Charlene was being allowed by her father to stay overnight at other people's houses and had been caught engaging in a sex act with an older female friend. That same year, Social Services files show Charlene alleged her mother and father were beating her. She had bruising on her chest consistent with that claim. Charlene's mother, Karen, also admitted in an interview that Bob also would be physically violent with his children. Multiple people who knew Bob and the family highlighted that Bob had a serious drinking problem. In June of 2000, a doctor suspected that Charlene had been SA'd. She was also being seen at the NHS Walk-in Center for ongoing health issues. In June of 2000, Charlene reported her father to social services, but then retracted it. Bob moved out of the family home temporarily to appease the authorities before eventually returning. During this time, Charlene and Robert Jr. were placed with foster families. In September of 2000, Bob secured a new home at 109 Buchanan Street and pulled Charlene and her brother Robert Jr. out of foster care against the wishes of social services. In November of 2001, local housing inspectors came to the home, but what they found had nothing to do with housing. Inside a bedroom, they caught a man with Charlene who was pulling up his pants. Charlene was wearing only a t-shirt and was seen counting money. The family refused to cooperate with any further investigation, and Bob and Karen told officers the man was a good family friend and protested his innocence. In March of 2003, Charlene had visited the NHS Walk-in Center 13 times over 12 months. Her documented injuries included bruising to the inside of her thighs. Social services entry from July of 2003 notes that an unnamed man had been spoken to about his relationship with Charlene. Record states there is concern of his motives. That summer, Bob was employed as a security staff member at the Martin Mere Caravan site in Blackpool. According to a signed witness statement from the site's manager, Bob began work on July 7th and was asked to leave on August 28th. The manager received between 6 and 8 complaints that Bob was being inappropriate with the girls between the ages of 12 and 14. When the manager confronted him about it, he reportedly said, and this is a direct quote, "I'm only putting my hands around them."
In Blackpool's town center, something else had been operating for years under very little scrutiny. Police later determined that at least 11 fast food and takeaway shops in the town center had been functioning as what one police report described as honeypot premises. Places where male employees offered girls food, cigarettes, alcohol, and attention in exchange for sexual favors. The girls were mostly between 13 and 15 years old and came from difficult home situations, but some were as young as 11. Police estimated as many as 60 girls may have been caught up in this network. Police also believe Charlene was among the girls involved. Her friend Martin later described watching her walk into the alleyway behind a row of takeaway shops on the town's central strip and come back out 20 minutes later with cigarettes, alcohol, or money for the arcades. One such business was the Funny Boys Takeaway on Dixon Road. It was owned by Ayad Eddie Al-Batiki, a 29-year-old man from Jordan, and business partner and landlord, 50-year-old Mohammed Rez Raveshi. Police already had concerns about Rez before Charlene went missing. Detective Don Frazier happened to live next door, and he discovered him with 2 9-year-old girls watching adult films. Rez told Detective Frazier that the girls put it on by accident. Detective Frazier later said, "Raveshi told me it was a mistake and I didn't believe him. I was appalled." Despite this, Rez was approved to be a foster parent and teenage girls were placed in his home.
Around 6:45 p.m. on November 1st, Karen was on Church Street in Blackpool's town center, handing out flyers for a local Indian restaurant. That's when she ran into Charlene and Rebecca. Charlene was 14 years old at the time. She was wearing black jeans with a golden eagle design on the front, a black jumper with a white diamond pattern, and black boots. Some sources claim she might have also been wearing a white hooded cardigan on top. They spoke briefly. Rebecca said that she was headed home, and Charlene said she was going to meet up with some friends for the evening. She called them from a nearby phone booth while Karen waited with her. When her friends arrived, Karen watched Charlene walk off with them towards the Winter Gardens, which is a theater in Blackpool. That was the last time Karen ever saw her daughter. The next 4 hours were pieced together from CCTV and witness accounts. After leaving her mother, Charlene spent some time with that first group of friends before splitting off to meet another friend at around 9:30 p.m. The two of them visited the Carousel Bar on Blackpool's North Pier. CCTV footage from around 9 p.m. captured what police believe was Charlene at the junction of Dixon Road and Talbot Road, which runs from the North Pier towards the town center. In the footage, she is walking alongside an unidentified woman who appeared to be in her 30s with dyed blonde hair and a 3/4 length coat. That woman has never been identified. Charlene and her friend left the Carousel Bar at around 10 p.m. and returned towards the town center. Her friend last saw her at approximately 11 p.m. near the junction of Talbot Road and Abingdon Street. One more detail from that day came to light years later. Rebecca confirmed to a journalist that earlier in the day, Charlene had received 70 British pounds from a man who gave his name only as Ronnie. Police still don't know who he was and could only speculate on why he gave her the money.
Both Karen and Bob claimed to have waited for Charlene to come home that night. On November 3rd, 2 days after Charlene was last seen, Karen formally reported her daughter missing to police. Karen stated in an interview that she tried to report Charlene missing the day she disappeared, but was refused by police, saying she needed to wait 24 hours. But this was quickly disproven with audio from Karen's call to emergency services. On it, the dispatcher asked Karen why she waited, with Karen saying she thought she might return on her own. Another thing to note from the phone call is that Karen initially refused to meet with police, saying that she had to go out shortly, but agreed when the dispatcher insisted she needed to stay home and be interviewed. As investigators worked through interviews, they hit a wall as the girls who knew Charlene were not talking. They gave conflicting, evasive accounts, and the reasons slowly became clear. These girls were scared because this wasn't as simple as finding a missing girl. This appeared to be connected to the grooming network we described earlier that these girls were directly victimized by. Raymond Monroe, who was one of the men Bob had been letting stay at 109 Buchanan Street, was living there the weekend Charlene disappeared. 3 days after she went missing, Raymond appeared in court and was jailed for essaying 3 girls under the age of 10. Years later, Bob told a documentary team that he didn't know what Raymond had done until he was sentenced. A social services report claims there was an incident between Raymond and Charlene the day she disappeared, but the specifics have yet to be made public. Police have now publicly admitted that, had Charlene returned home, she would have been taken from her family and put under a police protection order. Police also established that another man connected to the family had told Karen he was in love with her 14-year-old daughter, meaning Charlene. Apparently, this man cannot be named for legal reasons. After Charlene's disappearance, that man admitted to police that he had paid Charlene for a sex act. However, the statement couldn't be used in court as he hadn't been read his rights before making it.
In March of 2006, Lancashire police opened a murder inquiry and arrested 2 men, Eddie, who was charged with murder, and Rez, who was charged with assisting in the disposal of a body. The prosecution's case rested primarily on information from a local businessman named David Cassidy, who installed slot machines in the area's takeaway shops and knew both men. David told detectives that Eddie's brother Tarek had confided in him that Charlene had been murdered. According to David, she had been chopped up and there had been a lot of blood, and that she had gone into the kebabs. David said he was warned to stay quiet and was later offered what amounted to an interest-free £20,000 loan by Rez to keep his mouth shut. Acting on his tip, Lancashire police launched a covert surveillance operation. Listening devices were placed in both men's flats and in Rez's car. For the following weeks, police collected 52 tapes of audio. This took 2,400 hours to transcribe over a 2-year period. Detective Sergeant Jan Besant was assigned to listen to those recordings and transcribe them. Her transcripts included alleged statements from Eddie, where he could be heard saying, "I killed her, I killed a girl, I was just angry," as well as references to a girl being chopped up, and that her remains had gone in the kebabs. Rez was allegedly heard saying, "There was nothing left of her. She was here, she died. There really is nothing." Those transcripts were the backbone of the prosecution's entire case. The case went to trial in May of 2007 at Preston Crown Court. Prosecution argued that Charlene had been groomed and essayed by men working at the takeaway shops before her death, and that she had been murdered by Eddie. Their theory was that Charlene was dismembered, put through a mincing machine, and mixed into the food. It was an allegation so extreme it would be attached to Charlene's name for 20 years. The tabloids went so far as to call her Kebab Girl. And when looking up Charlene's story, this is still mentioned to this day. Both men denied ever having met Charlene and maintained their innocence throughout. However, a witness who worked at a different restaurant testified that she had overheard a conversation between Eddie and her employer, during which he claimed he had previously had sex with Charlene and joked that she had gone into the kebabs. David Cassidy also testified at trial about what Tarek had told him and that he had subsequently been warned to stay quiet.
The jury deliberated for 49 hours across 11 days, but they could not reach a verdict. A retrial was scheduled for April of 2008, but before it could begin, the case collapsed from the inside. While preparing for the second trial, senior police officers raised serious concerns about the covert surveillance evidence, specifically the recordings involving David Cassidy. D.S. Besant's transcripts were not verbatim records. They were summaries and key passages were omitted. Background audio and noise were not transcribed. A conversation between David and Tarek had its middle section missing entirely from the recording, apparently because the device had been paused. Years later, an expert in audio transcription also reviewed what were considered some of the more damning pieces of evidence and disagreed with the transcriptions. It was also highlighted that a neutral third party or someone without any prior knowledge of what's going on should have been the one to do the audio transcription to avoid confirmation bias. There was also the matter of the VHS recordings. Better quality recordings of the covert surveillance had existed all along, but they had been described to the prosecutor as having no significance. When the defense obtained access between the first and second trials, they found material that seriously undermined the prosecution's case. At the first trial, D.S. Besant had stated she never visited Rez's home, which mattered because an elderly resident named Thora Rigby had testified that 2 police officers had tried to pressure her into saying something negative about him. If she was one of those officers, then her credibility as an impartial witness was gone. Video evidence from the VHS recordings appeared to show she in fact had been at the address. When confronted with the footage, she made a statement saying she had no cognitive recollection of visiting Thora Rigby. Once the VHS recordings were examined, she walked back her most damaging testimony, including a claim that one passage contained the phrase, "I killed her in the bedroom."
The Crown Prosecution Service was notified, as was the Independent Police Complaints Commission, or IPCC for short. The retrial was abandoned, and the prosecution told the court they had no case to present. Eddie and Rez walked out of the court as free men, with more than £230,000 in compensation for false imprisonment. Both had spent 2.5 years locked up while awaiting trial. There was zero forensic evidence linking either man to Charlene Downs. A week later, Karen stabbed Bob during an argument. He didn't press charges, telling police he understood Karen had lashed out because of grief and distress. Following month, a separate SA charge against Eddie was dropped when CPS offered no evidence. September of 2009, Emma went to trial for racially aggravated assault on Tarek at a nightclub. On the first day of trial, the prosecution accepted her plea to the lesser charge of common assault and was sentenced to community service. In October of 2009, the IPCC published its findings after an 18-month investigation. The report found the operation had been handled poorly and unprofessionally, and contained a catalog of errors which undermined the court case. This included failure to keep proper records, failure to ensure evidence integrity, use of inexperienced and untrained officers, failure to fully transcribe material collected, and failure to properly brief David Cassidy before he was wired, meaning that his recorded conversations contained leading questions that compromised their value entirely. 7 detectives were disciplined. 1 officer faced a formal disciplinary hearing. 1 received a written warning. 5 received formal warnings. 2 other detectives had retired before the investigation concluded and could not be formally disciplined. In 2011, following the IPCC disciplinary recommendation, Detective Sergeant Jan Besant was found guilty of 2 counts of misconduct by the Lancashire Police and was dismissed. The following year in 2012, a police arbitration tribunal overturned that finding and ruled that she should be reinstated. By 2014, her lawyer announced she was preparing to sue the Lancashire Police for up to £500,000, insisting her original transcripts had been accurate. Detective Dawn Fraser resigned and went to an employment tribunal for wrongful termination. The matter was settled privately out of court. In 2011, Eddie was separately convicted of assault after headbutting an 18-year-old woman. In 2012, Robert Jr. was caught on camera punching Rez outside of court. He received a fine and a suspended sentence. Nobody has ever been convicted of anything connected to Charlene's death as of the date of this recording in June of 2026.
By 2010, the Funny Boys takeaway had been renamed Mr. Beans. The Lancashire police secured a ruling restricting the shop's license to serve hot food between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m., citing fears about ongoing sexual activity linked to the premises. Both men challenged the decision, calling it a police vendetta. Their appeal was rejected. The case became a focal point for British far-right groups. The English Defence League, the British National Party, and later Britain First organized marches under the banner of Justice for Charlene, framing her disappearance entirely as a story about Muslim men targeting white girls. The Downs family joined those marches. Karen said at the time, "No one else has been doing anything to help us." By 2011, Karen was using social media to blame Asian takeaway staff for what happened to her daughter and calling for all Muslims to be burnt with petrol and explosives. The British National Party funded a memorial plaque for Charlene that same year.
In response to Charlene's case, the Lancashire Police and Blackpool Council established the Awaken Exploitation Team. This is a partnership between the council, social care, the NHS, and police to protect vulnerable young people from exploitation. In November of 2013, the Lancashire Police assigned a specialist team to the investigation for the first time, which included one senior homicide detective dedicated solely to the Charlene Downs case. This same team also took on the case of 15-year-old Paige Chivers, another Blackpool girl who disappeared in 2007 under similar circumstances. Paige's killer was convicted in July of 2015. In November of 2016, a cold case review of old evidence turned up something that made Karen Downs furious. Investigators found CCTV footage of Charlene walking through Blackpool with Rebecca on the afternoon that she had disappeared. Footage that had been sitting on police shelves for 13 years unnoticed. It was released publicly on the 13th anniversary of her disappearance. Karen's response was, "What I can't fathom is why this was never found in the previous investigation." In August of 2017, a man from Preston was arrested on suspicion of Charlene's murder. He was 51 years old and had been living in Blackpool when she disappeared. He was released 2 days later and is no longer under investigation. In 2017, Karen published a book called Sold in Secret: The Murder of Charlene Downs, detailing her belief that police had not taken Charlene's disappearance seriously because the family was working class. She said, "I often wonder, if she had been from a posh family and was having piano lessons, would they have tried harder to find her?" In 2019, Vice aired a 3-part documentary called The Murder of Charlene Downs, which included Rez's first ever on-camera interview. When asked whether he knew anything about Charlene's disappearance, he said, "I don't have any clue about what you're talking about. I don't care whether she's alive or dead. I couldn't give a toss, to be honest." That same year, Robert Jr. was jailed for attacking his mother. He died approximately 2 years later of a suspected heroin overdose. He was around 30 years old at the time of his death. In June of 2025, Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced a full national statutory inquiry into grooming gangs across England and Wales. Karen welcomed this announcement. She told the BBC, "I'd never heard of grooming gangs when Charlene went missing. I was shocked by the scale of it. Hopefully this inquiry will shed more light on it and more will be done."
22 years later, Charlene Elizabeth Caroline Downs has never been found. There was no burial. She has no grave or headstone to visit. Without any of that, her memory has been kept alive by the people who loved her, and by strangers who refused to let her case go cold. On the 20th anniversary of Charlene's disappearance, Rone Crompton hung a banner outside the main social services building in Blackpool's town center. It read, "Break the silence on child abuse." People stopped as they walked past to thank her. One woman called out, "Keep at it, that poor child deserves a resting place." Tyne Yates was 12 years old when Charlene disappeared. She had also been a victim of exploitation in Blackpool during those years. She shared that, and I quote, "It torments me knowing that I probably know her killers. When I look into the eyes of some of the men that prowl the streets preying on vulnerable young girls, I can't help but wonder if one of them was the last face that she ever saw. Something horrible happened to her, and it could have easily been me. Sometimes I still get scared when I think about what happened to Charlene. I hope one day the mystery will be solved. Karen and her family can have some justice, and my beautiful friend Charlene will finally be at peace." Charlene's mother, Karen, said that. "I've often shouted, 'Charlene,' and the girls turn around, and it's not her. I miss everything about her. I just want her back."